All right, we're live. Good day and welcome to another episode of it's not what you reckon. This is Any News Australia, and we've got a special guest for you today, Brady Gunn, the founder of Stand in the Park, with us today. Look, we're going to talk to Brady about a little bit about his background, about his journey about Stand in the Park, get to know him a little bit better, and get his ideas on some of what's happening in this country and around the place as well. Welcome, Brady. How are you?
Thanks, mate. Good, you?
Good, good. I've been well. So, for those that might not know, Brady and I first got to know each other probably early December last year when we travelled into regional New South Wales, trying to, just research and investigate what was happening in those regional communities with the COVID situation and the Indigenous populations, and everyone else out there too, I guess. And look, I got to know you as a really funny guy and a really down to earth kind of dude, and we had some deep and meaningful talks about everything, and I thought it'd be great to share with everyone else. So thanks a lot for making the time.
No worries. Good to see you again.
For those people that don't know too much about you, do you mind going into a bit about your background and where it all started, and what inspired you to sort of take a stand?
Yeah, Sydney boy originally, and we had a bit of a tumultuous teenage phase there, and left school pretty early, and was asked to leave school fairly early, and then did lots of different jobs. Went travelling for a fair while, and had a business in London, and sort of went through a big spiritual shift where I had to deal with big depression that I went through, and came out the other side of that, and more businesses. And then as soon as this shit kicked off, it was just pretty obvious that it was utter nonsense. And so, as it has done with a lot of people's lives, it was just a completely new trajectory for me. And the rest is history.
Yeah, I was really interested to find out about your background as a comedian, and so it made a
Yeah.
lot of sense after the conversations we'd had that there was something in there. Yeah, I think you think you're funnier than you are, but you're pretty
Oh, I'm
funny from where
fucking
I was sitting.
absolutely hilarious. And hey, who else is there? Yeah, no, I was at a small stint as a comedian. I was selling houses, and when I was about 19 or 20, and then just decided I was going to be a stand-up comedian. And so I was working for a radio station, and I was a comedian for a little while. I was never very good, to be fair, but I used to get paid for it here I'm not in Sydney at the moment, but down in Sydney, and certainly good life experience. I knew that I was quite consciously doing that because I knew that it wouldn't get much harder, and I'm glad I did it, and it was true. If you can do that, you can do anything. And it used to be horrible. I used to vomit before I went on, and it was just horrible.
Wow. Yeah, I've always thought about giving it a go. But are you aware of some of the Harvard studies where they try and work out which profession is the smartest? And I think that always comes out the comedians are the
Oh,
most
really?
intelligent.
Yeah,
Yeah,
without it,
yeah,
fucking hilarious and super smart. So that makes complete sense.
yeah. Well, I think to see what's going on, I think to call it in front of people and stuff as well, and they get into, and it seems like something they're trying to shut down at the moment with the cancelling or potential cancelling Dave Chappelle and people like that, and freedom of speech and all the rest. They're really doing it tough to
Yeah.
comedians at the moment.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's and they know it's the best vehicle. I mean, you can say a lot on stage. You can say a lot with a smile on your face in general, but you can say even more on stage with a microphone in your hand with a smile on your face. I mean, and just look at sort of the Simpsons and stuff like that. I mean, the stuff that they say and get away with, you couldn't say it out loud with a straight face to anyone, but they just get away with it. It's a license, and so it should be. It's a license to truth. Comedy is the best vehicle, and it's the best access point. If you can tell somebody something and make them smile at the same time, then they're here. Then what you're saying is going in. So some of this heavy political humour is some of the most powerful stuff on the planet. So it's such a shame to see this, but it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It is what it is. I think I've got to put that on a T-shirt or something. But can you recall? I remember you talking about it with me in private. But recall a moment where you sort of had that, that turning point where you said, "Look, I've got to do something about this," and how Stand in the Park was birthed, if you like.
Well, I was at the protests in Sydney, and it was quite obvious that the police had taken on a different tack, and that it was that these protests could do more and probably should do more, and were missing a whole chunk. And at that point, a lot of the organisers and a lot of the protesters were being targeted really heavily. And so I sort of had an idea for a different type of protest that wasn't really a protest. I think I called it the aero bar of protest, or the Seinfeld of protest. It was the protest about nothing. And so there was no organizer. It was consistent. It was every Sunday at 10 o'clock. There was no particular point to it. We were just standing for our own personal truth and for our own freedom. And even if we completely disagree with each other, we're standing for each other's freedom to disagree with each other. And that's beautiful. So we'd only wear yellow. There'd be no placards as such. Because there was no organizer, there'd be no one could get arrested. And there was a lot of hot air being spun online, which is great. But we have to connect in the physical. We just have to connect in the physical. It's as important as food and water, ultimately, to just stay connected to each other and validated in the real world. And a lot of people were feeling unvalidated and totally out of control online. And so I had this whole sort of idea. And so I decided it was going to be a stand. It wasn't a protest, which it still isn't. It was going to be a stand. And we'd use our bodies as energetic pinpoints, and what else are we going to do? I mean, I felt kind of helpless sitting there for a month or two doing fuck all, and then a protest had come along, and then we get chased around in circles like a fucking Benny Hill movie by the cops. It was just bizarre, and so I felt like I could do more. I had no idea what to do. I had no idea what I could do, but I could use my body, and the intention behind standing there. It is, and this is a spiritual war, and I'm a spiritual guy. The intention behind standing there is powerful, and we need to be in our power standing there. But we're stepping, not to get ahead of myself, and I promise I'll finish it. But people power is nothing without people who are in their power. A million people could walk around in circles all they like, waving a flag, but unless if the first Zephyr comes along and blows those people off, then what was the point? And so when you're stepping into that park, you're sort of stepping into your power, and it's certainly true. But so I announced it. I told everyone on the freedom groups at the time in Sydney that I was going to do this thing. It was called a stand in the park, and we'd wear yellow, and it was and all the points that I just listed. And I think it mostly got approved, but you can't just keep posting it. And so I was sort of posting. I think I posted it once in a couple of different groups, and I drove all the way into Hyde Park, and I stood there with my yellow vest on from 10 o'clock in the morning, and nobody came. Anyway,
that was the first day, right?
That was the first day. So next week, same thing. Posted it on the freedom groups on the Tuesday or the Wednesday. It was a stand. We're going to make a stand. We're wearing yellow. And people were watching. You can see what your post reach is, and some people liked it. And so I drove all the way in there, an hour in, parked the car and walked into Hyde Park and stood there, 10 o'clock. Nobody came. Not to worry, always next week. So I announced it again. Nobody came. Next week, drove all the way in there, stood there by myself. Nobody came. Next week, nobody came. Next week, nobody came. Next week, nobody came. So there for nearly 3 months, and nobody came. And then finally, two guys came down, and then another one, and then another one, and then it just sort of caught on fire. And now I think there's over 1,400 stand in the parks in nearly 40 countries every week, and I get the best. It really has made a difference, that thing. And I take no credit for anything other than standing in my truth. But man, when you look at what it's done, it's so fulfilling. It just fills my heart full of love. I was right. It really is important. We have to connect in the physical. We have to form community. This was lost at a community level. We got driven apart from each other, from nature, from spirituality, from ourselves. Driven apart by design, by these fucking morons, these psychopathic fuckwits, on purpose. And this can only be rebuilt at a community level. We can only rebuild this from the ground up in the way it was dismantled, and things like Stand in the Park and lots of other offshoots and other things that people are doing that are making the difference right now, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And I think, we also talked about it. It's very Gandhi-like, Gandhi-esque kind of approach to things. Standing in the park, doing nothing in particular, inspiring a whole bunch of other people to do the same. And it's interesting how threatened the establishment, if you like, felt with all of that, because you told me some of what happened to you after it had taken off. And if you mind sharing some of that.
Well, I mean, it's just heavily targeted from every angle. We just, from all of the social media sites and even our website. and just me in particular was just targeted heavily. I was arrested. I was put in jail. I was refused bail. I was given bail conditions eventually that a violent offender wouldn't have got. All of the charges were trumped up. I won't go into what exactly happened, but it was all just shite. 5 months of really strict bail conditions, $18,000 in legal bills. Later, they just dropped pretty much all of the charges, and the one or two that's left, which means I can't sort of go back at them like I could, is just a catch-22 mask fine. None of this should have even been in court. Just properly threw me under the bus. I mean, I was kicked out of Sydney. I was given 24 hours to leave Sydney. Just a political prisoner right here in Australia for fucking what? For standing in a park alongside alongside a bunch of old ladies armed with Pomeranians, kids wielding chinos, and me in a fucking smiley face fatigue. We're a dangerous terrorist organisation, standing there like irresponsible citizens, fucking hour in a park on a Sunday, talking. You can't. Sometimes you can't. Like, you just can't believe the words that are coming out of your own mouth when you're talking about this shit. Some of the time, it's just.
Yeah, well, it's powerful stuff for sure, right? It must be powerful stuff. And I think, they must have gone, this guy's pretty stubborn, 3 months in a row. Like, he's pretty determined.
Or he had no friends anyway. Like one of my mates, I said, to be fair, I didn't really have any friends. So I used to go into the park on a Sunday and just wave at people. Hi, my friend. No, nothing changed really. It's the standard Sunday.
So I've got a question written down here too. So if you could do it all again, was there any part of it that you think you'd do a bit differently?
No. And like I said, I've said it heaps of times, and I'll continue saying it. My intuition stood in that park. My truth stood in that park, and that's what we've all got to do: is step into this bigger spiritual space to fight this spiritual war, where your doubts and fears and judgments of yourself and others and programming is just wiped off, and you're standing in and trading in the currency of energy. And it doesn't matter whether you're with your God or the universe or your spirituality or your intuition, or even if you're an atheist, your best self or the biggest space, it doesn't fucking matter. But that's where the answers are. And if we were all there, this would be over in half a heartbeat. It would never have started, because you can't be this dissociated. Because this is a pretty good thermometer of a fucking sick society. This is crazy, and people have bought it. This is insane. And that doesn't exist in the bigger spiritual space. It doesn't exist when you're truly with your God. It doesn't exist when you're laying blame and justifying and speculating and expecting something outside of yourself. We have to step into our power, and it's not in our minds. It's only in our intuition. So my intuition ran that show then, and it continues to. So no, I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, fantastic answer. Yeah, for sure. So, many people look to you as a hero of sorts, or a leader of something in particular. I know the answer to this, and that's why I'm asking it. What do you think about all of that?
Just need to know the way home.
Yeah, GPS.
Go.
Something like that. Yeah, Navman, something like that.
Under name. It's Tina Turner. Fucking get with it. Come on. Max, please.
No, so but really, what do you say? Would you do? Some people are obviously thinking about these things. Would you run for politics? Would you do any of that kind of stuff? Is that sort of what are you thinking? I know, I know the answer, but I just want to sort of put it out there so maybe other people can understand more about you, like I had.
No, if my intuition led me down that path, then so be it. But I have no aspirations right now. No, and it seems to me that this out of control freight train is so far gone, with such velocity and so many people on board that are so dumb that there's no stopping this. I think we need to work on the alternatives. You can't, and we need to stand on the side of that freight train and welcome people off with open arms at the same time as we're working on alternatives. You can't demand your freedoms back. You can only just be free. We just need to focus on being free rather than trying to stop this and shaking our fingers and pitchforks at people. And in my humble opinion, that we can't do that. These people are so all in, and they're so out of control of themselves and such psychopaths that it doesn't matter what we do. They're not going to turn around and say, oh, "Okay, all right, we're sorry. Here's the world back. We didn't mean it.
You got us." Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. They're going to kill as many people as they have to. That's their plan. So trying to stop that is probably to an extent. And I organised a lot of protests, and I started standing in the park. But a lot of telling people what they should and shouldn't do and trying to stop them needs to be diluted, dispersed, or whatever, with working on actual solutions and building strong spiritual soldiers out of our children and ourselves, and getting out of debt, and making sure that we've got cash and gold and water and an escape route. And I mean, this is way, way, way worse than even people who've been right up the front with me since the very beginning have got any fucking clue as to how bad it is. I mean, this is, you try not to think about it because it's so bad, but it's even worse than those shots of reality that you get. This is bad, man. This is bad.
Yeah, I know you've been to a few protests and you emceed one recently, and but what do you think about protests in general, and also what's the current situation in Canberra with the convoys and all the rest?
Well, I was organising most of the protests for more than a year in Sydney, and I used to get the permit, I used to fund them, I used to market them, I used to print the T-shirts, I used to set up the stage, I used to borrow the sound system, I used to MC it, I used to pack it down, I fucking did everything. So I'm not anti-protest, and I certainly stood up when other people weren't, and I was paid a heavy price for it. And I started standing in the park, and so I really threw my chips down protesting, and I think it's great to energise and unite and show numbers and fill the batteries up to go back to the real world. But there's a lot of people who potentially are going to these protests and they're going home on the Monday and putting a mask on and checking in or pretending to check in and not saying a word to anyone and banking on the protests either doing something or somebody else going to fucking save them. They're missing a massive trick. The protests are basically good for nothing. These people are, in terms of true change, these people are looking out at the gilded skyscrapers at us going, well, what took you so long? And where are the rest of you? Like, they're ahead of schedule on this. They don't give a fuck. I mean, a million people have been walking around in circles in fucking Europe for ages. It hasn't changed anything. All this NHS shit being dropped is just part of the puppet show. So, yeah, protesting is great, but unless you're truly standing staunch in your spiritual truth and fighting tooth and nail in the real world, in the uncomfortable situations, in your truth, without this mind, then no change will take place ever. You could walk around in circles with 2 million people forever, and what's it going to do?
Yeah. So, have you kept across the convoys in Canberra? You think that that's something else, calling politicians out to have a talk and do something else? You think it might be any different, or you think it's all part of the same?
I think it's all part of the same, and I think it's great. But it's an enormous amount of time, energy, and resource. And so I've asked the question to multiple people, and a lot of the stand in the park crew are down there, and I would love to be down there. It seems great, but I think it's important to qualify, especially in situations that are so energy and time and resource heavy. What are you actually looking to achieve? And a lot of people don't know, and a
Yeah.
lot of people, they do answer. They want us. They want everyone to resign. But even if they do, it's up to me and you and them to run for Parliament. And so you might as well just go over there and sort of run for Parliament now, rather than trying to tell them to stop. There's no power outside of us.
Mm.
Waving your finger and a pitchfork out the front of somebody's house is going to do. It's going to be great for morale and feeling good and uniting, and everyone's having a great time down there. But unless people are in their power to fill that gap once it moves, if it does, then then what is it? And if people are in their power, then they're not waving pitchforks and fingers out the front of someone's house. They're fucking taking action where they are, staunch in their spiritual truth in their communities, and uniting and working on plan Bs and actually considering what's going on, rather than giving their power away to some idea or person. And so people, when they're listening to me say this, need to be very, very careful to listen to exactly what I'm saying. I'm not saying don't do it, but if you're giving your power away to the idea that that's going to solve something for you without stepping into your own power, then you're missing a fucking massive trick. Massive.
Yeah. It comes up a
And
lot in the people that I talk to as
we all
well.
do. We do it in our lives. We think that our partner's the reason we're unhappy. We think that our monetary situation is why we're unhappy. It's our boss's fault. It's what happened to us when we were a kid. If only that had have happened, then this wouldn't have happened. If this had happened, then that would have happened. We give our power away all the time, and we don't go into the pain. And so, unless we're standing staunch in that power, then we'll continue to repeat those patterns. Whatever.
Yeah, for sure. And so, it's something else I was just about to mention that comes up a lot with the people we talk to is how a lot of society has been conditioned to blindly subjugate themselves to authority. You see a doctor, you delegate your health to your doctor, you delegate your finances to your accountant, you delegate, your legal stance with your lawyer and so forth all the way down the track. You don't take any personal responsibility for anything. That's how you've been conditioned and trained. Rely on the government to do everything else, look after you and all the rest. And so it's quite a confronting idea for an adult in Australia, I guess, to take responsibility for themselves. But for sure, I think it's what we all need to be doing, right?
Well, yeah, and it has been by design, and it's a luxurious place. I mean, it's full of feathers and it's full of what looks like feathers and cushions and comfy places of protection and security, but it's a big pile of dog shit in the guise of that. And it's even worse for kids these days. I mean, when you look at this Ban the Bully campaign and a lot of how we've been treating kids as to someone's going to rescue them and it's not your fault, and even this androgynous stuff and a lot of this stuff that is part of is a foundation of some of these kids' childhoods is extremely damaging. They have become so reliant rather than so resourceful that they are. I mean, a lot of these kids are shells of human beings. Let's be honest. They have no capacity for conflict resolution, for enduring hardship. It's very real, and it's happened to us as well. And so, God help us all.
Yeah. I know. Well, let's move to a brighter topic. But yeah, it's the lack of resilience, isn't it, that a lot of the children are lacking these days? Yeah. Um, you're talking about political parties and for us to run for for office at some point or different things if people feel like that. What do you think about some of the political parties that have arisen out of all of this over the last little while?
Oh, look, and when I say run for parliament, that's only people stepping into their power. I don't think this system can be cracked from the outside in. We let them have too much power. We let them have too much power. So I don't know if that is essentially the answer, but it would be certainly people stepping into their power by doing it, and it's certainly part of the answer. But the idea that some politician is going to save us right now, at this point, and if more people were awake and the awake people were more awake, then I'd say something different. But at this point, we need to be working on plan Bs just as much as we're working on fighting this, or banking on other people fighting it for us, because there's not enough weight here to, in my mathematical humble opinion, to bank on or to back ourselves with. But I mean, the Informed Medical Options Party is by far and away my favourite party that I can see making the most difference, because I know that they're standing on the essence of truth. Anyone that comes along as a politician that says they've got the answers, I'd be very, 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 very wary of them. That's not to say that we can't. I mean, this is no time for infighting. I'm watching a lot of people sledging each other, and political parties and different factions of this movement, or whatever you want to call it. And I'm saying to them, we have nowhere near the luxury of fighting each other right now. Even if someone's known to be a infiltrator or plan or whatever opposition or whatever the fuck, we don't have the luxury of if they're using us, then we need to use them, because we just got to build numbers. We just have to build numbers right now before we can do anything, and we'll just sort them out later. So I mean, we have to bank on some of these politicians for some of the answers, whether or not they've got all of them, and whether or not we need to fuck them off later on because they're corrupted, we'll find out. But they certainly don't have all the. I mean, this has to be. This is lost at a grassroots level and has to be won at it, and that means stepping into our own power inside of ourselves at a community level. So
I'm hearing you. Yeah, so Informed Medical Options Party, I know they've been at it for many years before all of this as well, right? So I think that's That's an interesting thing to note. But yeah, you're right. It's that age-old saying too, where the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And I think it's time we all band together. We'll sort out our minor differences later, or whatever the case might be. But let's tackle the big problem at hand.
And look, even if you look at it as a war tactic, fair play there. I mean, if they're going to fucking use us, then we'll use them. We need to build numbers. We'll deal with them later. And we are smack bang in the middle of all-out full-scale World War III right now. It looks weird because our steak and chips still looks the same, and we're still living where we were, and our friends say the same words and whatever. But everything's changed. This is a very, very, very serious situation, and people are dying.
Yeah. What do you think about the UK lifting restrictions? You touched on a little bit before. Some people, I guess, in some circles are seeing this as quite a possible win, a win, a wine back. Maybe the narrative's unraveling, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm not completely convinced of that. What's your thoughts on some of where this might be going?
Well, it's all part of the puppet show, but that doesn't mean it's not a win. I mean, they're just going to keep manoeuvring and repositioning and coming around the back and up the outside and through the middle. And I mean, these guys have got some serious tools at hand, and they think they're fucking smart, but they've just got a shit ton of money and some serious tools. And they're looking at our facial recognition, our facial expressions, minute by second by second. We're staring at these phones so much on Facebook. They know exactly where the temper of the times is in the community. They know exactly how to measure when to pull back, when to push forward, when to do what, when to do this, when to do that. I mean, they've got some serious tools, and so if they feel like they're losing a bit, or the election's coming up, or whatever, they'll pull it back a bit, or they'll move it sideways, or they'll come around the back. But I should say in the same breath that this is not a sealed unit. They are relying heavily on technology, and they have got a lot of tools at hand, but they're also not a sealed unit. These are not perfect people. They don't have the resources to fully police us like the way they need to. And so we can duck and dive and dart around the outside at the same time as they're pulling and pushing this stuff. But so it's scary, and it's completely out of control. I mean, this government couldn't organise a fucking pink bats insulation scheme. They can't organise a solar buyback thing, and they want to do this. I mean, these are not sane, well-rounded, full-bodied spiritual humans. These are out of control psychopaths clutching at straws with they're chimps with a fucking gun. They're just waving it around, and the stupid thing about it is it's not even a real gun. It's one of those guns like the clown has when the thing comes out and the little flag goes bang.
Bang, yeah.
They're fucking chimps. It's not even a real gun, but we're treating it seriously. But that's who we're dealing with, and so I think this is a technological war. I don't think we're going back to. I think we're going back to Stone Age. The technology is far too instrumental to their plans. It's the Internet of Things and 5G. That the only way that we can lose technology is for the internet to go down, and they can't do that. They will lose their part of this if they do that. They'll push and pull. You'll have to.
That's a good point.
You'll have to produce ID to get online. The power grid's going to go down. The internet will go down. There'll be this cyber fucking bullshit that they're going to make up. But the internet will never go down. And so I think that's one of our most powerful tools. So if there's any Russian hackers out there, you're about to be in high demand. And they're relying on it so heavily that if you can get around it, you can be right in the middle of this and fully functioning human being. But if you've got good computer skills, you'd be circumnavigating it from the inside out. They're going to rely on it so heavily, and they're relying on it to police itself, that if you're underneath their guard, then they won't even know you exist.
Yeah. No, good stuff. I think you've already touched on sort of what the future holds for us, I guess. But then what do you think people listening should be doing today? For themselves or for the future? And
well, this economic crash is the big daddy. I mean, this looks bad, and people are dying, and it's the vaccine passports, and it's serious. But this economic crash that's coming, and this redesign, this great reset, is far more in depth than just this. And this economic crash is going to kill way more people than obviously the virus, but even the vaccination. We're about to watch hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of people die from the economic fallout of this, and they're going to enslave everybody. It's going to they're going to present it like utopia. because they're going to wipe. Interest rates are going to go to 30%. They're stealing our shit, is what's happening. They're stealing everybody's stuff from under their noses. They're creating hyperinflation. Inflation is theft. That's what it is. This whole monetary system's built on fucking bamboo sticks and feathers. It's just, there's no foundation to it whatsoever. It's completely by design. They control the whole thing. They're going to steal all of our stuff, mop it up at bargain basement prices, pretend they're going to put us back in it, and they're going to enslave us to this debt. You used to be able to go bankrupt and sort of, I mean, in Australia, you were still sort of enslaved to it. You couldn't do stuff for 7 years. In America, you could almost just walk away from your house loan. You still can walk away from your house loan. It'll look like a good deal, but they're going to enslave you to this debt. You're going to owe them big time for the grace of them giving you an out. And so you might be able to keep your house if you're out of debt. That's debatable. They're probably going to take it anyway. They're going to take inheritance tax. They're just stealing our shit. And so you get out of debt, get some cash so that when the internet goes down, you can at least buy some shit, buy some gold so you can take some shavings off it. And if you can get out of the cities, I mean, this will live and die in the cities, but they will be all in to make it work, and a lot of people are going to die because of it. And they're going to try and hunt us out of the country areas, but they don't have the resources to come and get us as such. They're just going to try and starve us out of it. So try and get out of the city if you can. If not, form community, because the true currency is going to be relationships, fucking pumpkins, gold, and whatever else you can trade, and skills. Yeah, I mean, it's going to get that bad.
I've heard $5 bottle of wines will be good too. Yeah,
bottle of wine. Oh yeah.
Yes. I know some people buying cases and pallets of $5 bottles, so you can barter and trade it. You know, you can drink it if you need to, or you can swap it if you need to. Yeah, one of those types of things. Yeah.
It'll all be gone.
So yeah, look,
can I swap an empty bottle for a pumpkin? Fuck off.
It's interesting. A few years back, if you were to bring up some of these things, they'd be considered full-blown conspiracy theory type content, I guess. But I mean, if people are paying attention, when did you become aware of some of all of these things that you're just mentioning now? Was it in this last couple of years, or did you have exposure to some of this information before then?
Oh, look, I always looked at conspiracy theories, and thought that there's probably more chance of that being true than not. And I was always sort of switched on to how much of a pile of shit this whole thing was. But I was never forced into any type of research or reaction. But within a split second of this stuff kicking off, and I think I posted first in February 2020 after it sort of came out of China and we'd all seen these people dropping dead. And I made a post on my personal page saying, "Hey, just be careful, guys. Here, something doesn't add up. It's a bit convenient for some of the stuff that they're telling us they've got planned." And I knew nothing really at that stage, and got fucking mauled for it, absolutely hammered.
Yeah, wow.
Doing the right thing. To be fair to everyone, people have gone along with this. They care about their fellow man. They were trusted people that they should be able to trust, and so there's no hard feelings towards anyone unless they sort of keep going much further with it, because most of us are good human beings. But so I forgive them for attacking me, but it was very obvious to me that something didn't add up. And then you start doing some research into this, and the first second doesn't add up, and the next 4,000 hours continues to just not add up. At no stage do you ever turn around and go the other way. It just tumbles that way absolutely 100% and just keeps tumbling. And the more you look at it, the more scary it is, because the more by design it obviously has been and continues to be, and the less foundation it's got. And so immediately.
Yeah, it's interesting how you mentioned the people dropping dead in China. That's some of the first of what we were showed over here. But then nothing in the last 2 years, even with 18,000 cases a day and everything else, have we ever seen that happen here or actually anywhere, right? What an interesting.
Yeah. And it's so ridiculously obvious that it's hair-pullingly frustrating. It's so befuddlingly, annoyingly, stupidly bullshit, and the people go away with it, go along with it is just. I mean, there's no words for it. But people are so heavily invested in this, and if you pull on the thread of it, you have to take responsibility for the rest of it. And so people just want it to go away, and so they're so invested in it, they just have to back themselves now because of how heavily they followed this and who's involved. And that they'll probably die with it. I mean, I used to say that the top will blow off this one day, but the top's never been on the fucking thing. There's never been a top. All this information's been freely available, but these people will take it to the grave and defend it heavily because it's just too hard not to. It's just too hard to take responsibility for it. And they're just too weak. So I don't see the great awakening happening quite like I feel like it should and thought it might. This would be a very segregated and divided society for quite a long time, and I don't know what it looks like long term. I really don't.
Yeah, it's something that we can all sort of ponder, and I think we can all start imagining and sort of manifesting the society that we want if we do come together. Look, I'm conscious you've got to go to a stand in the park meeting, don't you? Somewhere. It's 8:07. But any final comments and some final questions, and we might wrap this up so we can let you go.
No, it's just a very important. It's just the crux of the entire next step, and the Great Awakening is us within. The Great Awakening is within. The Great Awakening isn't something that looks like something that's led by someone that involves those people that looks like that at the end. It's just not happening. It's inside of us, and it doesn't have to. You can't try to create the Great Awakening. You can only step into. It's like that Indiana Jones movie. I don't know if you've seen it, where he's Sean Connery, his dad. I forget who it is, but anyway, he's got to cross.
There's a Crystal Skull one, isn't it, or something? Yeah,
I think so. And he's got to cross the chasm, and the bridge doesn't appear until he steps off the cliff.
Yeah,
and we've got to just trust that everything that we have the power, and that things will unfold. But you got to take that trust fall. You know, when you fall backwards off the table or whatever, and your friends catch you, it's called a trust fall.
Yeah,
and you're going to be caught until you pass that point of no return. And we've got to go past that point of no return into our bigger selves and into our spirituality with our gods together, past that point of no return before we know we can be caught. And so it's up to all of us. It's up to all of us. That looks different for each of us. All of our personal truths are different, and all of our personal truths will continue to look different. And we don't, and we can't feel small so that we don't do anything. The people who are making the sandwiches are just as important as the fucking campaign managers and the people running for president. We've all got a part in this. We can't feel small. We can't not do anything because we might feel small, and we've got to do it together. But it's up to us. None of us can do it without each other.
Fantastic. It was great having you on the show. I think it was, it exceeded my expectations. Yeah, I like your words of wisdom. You can tell you're very down to earth, and you've done a lot of work on yourself to get to this point as well.
Funny as fuck.
Fucking funny. That's right. Yeah. I look forward to hanging out with you again soon. But hold on, we've got if people want to get involved or support either what you've started here, which is Stand in the Park. Is that the right address? Standinthepark.org.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. Anybody gets down to their local Stand in the Park or starts one, we have to have these relationships. It's extremely important that we don't feel alone. It's extremely important that we have these energy exchanges, and anybody who's gone to a Stand in the Park will know that you walk away an inch higher because you've just fueled yourself. And we have to be building these relationships going forward with people who've got our backs. And a lot of action's being taken out of Stand in the Park. Stand in the Park does nothing. It's the Seinfeld of protests. It's the protest about nothing. It's not even a protest. It's a cup of coffee with your mates, but you can't underestimate it. And it's extremely important. It's extremely important that we form community. Extremely important.
Who would have thought nothing would be so powerful? But thank you again, everyone, for watching another episode of Any News Australia. Thank you for the volunteers that helped me behind the scenes. Thank you again, Brady Gunn, for taking the time out to share some of your thoughts with our viewers. Good on you, everyone. Cheers. Like, share, subscribe. Put this in the hands of someone that can use this information. And we'll see you all soon.
Good man.
Bye for now.
See you, brother.